The inherent tyranny is there for all to see. And I see polls in Europe every time a country like France or others gets to vote on some new EU expansion. They don't normally let nations even have a vote like England and others. They vote to get out. They don't want it. And I've seen it in Reuters. I've seen reports out of Spain and Greece where government officials are saying big banks, just like Iceland, engineered this collapse. The EU has set it up so that Greece will fully become bankrupt and be completely absorbed into this system. And you alluded to that when you were chastising and calling Van Rompuy out on the carpet a few days ago. Here is a quick clip of that.
I sense, though, that you're competent and capable and dangerous, and I have no doubt that it's your intention to be the quiet assassin of European democracy and of the European nation states. You appear to have a loathing for the very concept of the existence of nation states. Perhaps that's because you come from Belgium, which of course is pretty much a non-country.
Okay, so in layman's words, I mean, you're not exaggerating. This is even in the newspapers all over Europe. The EU is this predatory bureaucracy globally setting up carbon taxes, 45 trillion. You even have fissures within the EU with some of the moral people. The 47-member health board with Wolfgang Wodarg came on the show and said they found out that the EU and the UN were literally getting money from Big Pharma to all of their heads, bribes to lie about the swine flu. So it's just all a giant global corporate system, corporations coming in, banks coming in, and using this government holding company to literally engage in piracy.
Yeah, it all fits together, doesn't it? Hand in glove. You know, the big businesses, the bureaucrats that have the sole right to make laws. It all fits together. They're all very happy with the world they're creating. But the optimistic thing is, whatever happens to Greece, at some point in time, there's going to be a revolution where the Greeks fight and insist to get back their own country and their ability to run it. This stuff, tyranny, it can be an awful thing. It can last for years, but in the end, all these things break up. And I'm hopeful. I'm hopeful that people are waking up to this. And I just don't think that having a single currency for countries as different as Germany and Greece, it can't work. It just can't work. So they appear to have all the cards at the moment, but we're winning the battle of public opinion, and that's just what we've got to do.
Philosophers have said it many different ways, but to paraphrase it, adversity makes men, and easy times makes weak, passive people. And because our ancestors fought so hard in England, the birthplace of the Magna Carta, and in 1776 and 1789 here in the United States, which was the light of liberty for the world, the model against feudalism and all the forms of tyranny and slavery, people got fat and decadent. Now the pendulum swung towards tyranny, and it's creating that awakening and that rediscovery of freedom. And you calling him out, not letting him be the quiet assassin, is devastating them, and they look very afraid of you.
Yeah, they are. They're terrified. They really are scared because they know that I'm articulating a view that is already held by tens of millions of people across the European countries. And their real fear, of course, is if we have a proper big debate about these issues, then the numbers who support me will double or treble from where they are now. So they are scared. Very, very scared. And it's remarkable when you think about it that in that parliament this week, there was the president, there were all the commissioners, the leaders of the European socialist groups and all the rest of it. And here's just little me, and yet they're absolutely scared witless. So I'm going to go on scaring them, even if I have to have a short holiday away from the parliament because they suspend me.
Let's talk about his global government comments, because he's really out in the open. You said this week, and I saw it in the news, he's just spouting off about what they're going to do with our lives and how they rule us. Specifically, what was Van Rompuy saying about the global government?
Van Rompuy spoke, and he firstly talked about the need, not just for a single currency in Europe, but for a full economic government of Europe. And that wasn't particularly surprising. He said similar things to that before. But what he said was that he was very encouraged by moves that he'd seen through the G20 and elsewhere, which presumably means the United Nations. He was very encouraged to see that we were now starting to deal with global problems on a global governmental basis. And by that, of course, he means climate change taxes. By that, of course, he means, attitudes towards ultimately tax and spend. So, I mean, this guy, I've never heard anybody inside those EU institutions ever openly talk about world government, talk about global solutions to problems. It's one of those things that's been talked about in the corridors. It is now out in the open, and it just shows you how mad and dangerous these people are, doesn't it?
They're making their move. Nigel Farage, a UK member of the European Union Parliament, will be with us on the other side. We'll give you his party's website. They control the right and the left in England. This is the only real party that has a chance and is winning seats everywhere and really starting to scare the system. We'll be right back. Nigel Farage is our guest. Got 5 more minutes left with him. He's got a book coming out in 3 weeks. He'll be back with us. Van Rompuy deserves to be pulled down, deserves to be insulted, to demystify this unelected scallywag. But, I mean, was it your tactic to add some insults so it made even more news, so people would actually look at the facts you laid out about him trying to assassinate sovereignty? A. B., the next time you get to address him, hopefully you would just bring up that I know you have before, that he's unelected, he wants global government, and that his whole carbon system is a fraud. But I know other members of your party in the parliament are also now exposing him.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest with you, this was the first time he'd appeared before the European Parliament. And my plan going in was to basically say, who are you? No one's ever heard of you. How can you have power? How can you have a salary that is bigger than the President of the United States of America? How can you have these 30 staff working for you? How can you have an incredible tax scheme where you only pay 17% income tax? How can you have a €5 million pool of money which you can dip into as and when you like? So that was my plan, was to say that. But I listened to his speech, and it was so boring. It was so dull. It was limp. It was lifeless. It was just so ghastly. But that's where I suddenly thought, well, what I'm going to have to say is, sir, you have all the charisma of a damp rag.
And let's be clear. Many countries in Europe have over a 50% income tax, France even higher, but the EU made their own jurisdiction where their ministers and bureaucrats pay 17% or lower, so they're exempt from taxes. I mean, this is classic textbook tyranny. Nigel Farage, plug the UK Independence Party website, your strategy across the world to get people to unseat these globalist-controlled puppets. Yeah,
I mean, listeners, find out what we're doing. Go to ukip.org. ukip.org, and you find what we're up to. We are a party that started with nothing. A few of us in a pub in London, and we've taken that on, and last year we came second across the entire UK in the direct elections to the European Parliament. And my message to everybody the world over is, do not, under any circumstances, vote for people who will give away your liberties and rights. Do not vote for people who are supporting the growth of global government. If it means going for new candidates, if it means going for new parties, do it. Don't think it's hopeless. It isn't. We're proving it can be done. And when you're doing it, remember that in the end, good will always triumph over tyranny.
And you and many others are the model for others to believe they can have success. We've got almost 40 states, it's at 37, 38 now, moving to declare 10th and 9th Amendment power over the federal government, itself seized by foreign banks and government institutions. And so there is a massive awakening worldwide and all over the planet. The third world, 3 months ago, wouldn't sign on at Copenhagen. They know the scam. I mean, we've really got the people.
Yeah, the scales are falling. I mean, they really are, aren't they? People do not believe or trust their political classes. They're right not to trust them, and we're now seeing that moving into active, real politics. And hey, to a large extent, what I was able to do this week to the President of the European Parliament is living proof that if something's wrong, you've got to get out there, hold your chin up, and do things differently and fight hard. That's what we've done. We're making progress. I want others to do so right across the world.
And you hadn't been politically active. You just saw this and stood up yourself just a few years ago, and look at all the success you as the progenitor of this have.
I was business. You know, I mean, I don't come from one of these ruling class families or anything like that. I was just an ordinary bloke who just felt that something was horribly wrong, and if there was I felt if there was nobody out there that was prepared to stand up and say the right things, I'd jolly well do it. And in doing so, I've met some good people on the way, people like Lord Monckton, people like Godfrey Bloom, who you've had on your show, and, you know, there are others out there who felt like me. So it's been an extraordinary journey, but I tell you what, we're not finished yet. We're going to beat the so-and-sos.
We are, if we have the will to stand up and fight, and you're a great example. In the last minute we've got left, an individual website, or how do we support you individually? You have a lot of listeners in England. And give out the UK Independence Party website one more time.